Never ever start investing while you still have debt. You can't start taking risks investing while you still owe people. And then there's, make sure you start investing today, right now, this second. It doesn't matter if you have debt because waiting is dumb. I'm sure you've heard arguments on both sides of this debate. While the perfect answer lies somewhere in between both of those extremes, I'm here to tell you that this decision could literally cost you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. In this video, we'll discuss all the different factors that you need to consider when you need to decide which goal to tackle first, either paying off your debt or investing first. In 2019, I had well over $100,000 in debt from credit cards, student loans, a personal loan, which is usually a horrible idea, and I even had a business loan as well. And that's a good story, but for another day. On top of all that debt, I also just started my career and I was only making about $63,000 a year, which relatively speaking wasn't enough because I was just barely making enough to get by. Since then, I paid off all that debt and I currently have over $50,000 invested. But did I invest first or did I pay off that debt? In this video, we'll discuss all the factors that you'll need to know to consider when deciding which goal you want to tackle first. And because you're watching this video, you can get my debt calculator that I use to get rid of all that $100,000 in debt in the description below. Investing is the only way to build wealth in this country. And I'm gonna say it one more time for the people in the back. Investing is the only way to build wealth in this country. And time in the market is the #1 factor when it comes to investing. This means you should have started investing yesterday. But luckily, the next best time to invest is today, like right now. Similarly though, holding debt is probably the main reason why you feel broke, and it's also the main reason why you can't afford to invest. Just think about all the minimum payments that you have, whether it be your credit card minimum payment, your car note, or whatever you have to pay every single month associated to debt. Now imagine you didn't have any of those because they're all paid off now. You probably have hundreds of dollars, maybe even a couple $1,000s every single month that's just sitting in your bank account. You can use it to invest or you can just use it to enjoy your life. Because of this, paying off debt seems like the mandatory first step. But is that the best way to go or is it not? So I'm here to tell you that this is not an all or nothing decision. Back in 2019, when I decided to get my money together, did I prioritize paying off my debt first? Yeah, kinda. Did I start investing that year? Kinda. I continued investing because I had already started a couple years before. Yes, I was struggling when I was putting down 10% of my income into a 401k, but that 10% wasn't going to solve my problems. So back in 2019, when I decided that debt was no longer going to be part of my life, I did continue investing. But what I did is I decreased my contributions down to the employer match. So this put me at about 4% contributions rather than 10. Basically, I was going to get all the free money that they were offering, but my main priority at that time was paying off all of my high interest debt. I just dropped a gem on you there, but if you didn't catch it, it's okay, because now we're going to discuss the top 2 rules to follow when making this super important decision. There are a few other things to consider that we will discuss, but these top 2 things will trump all of it. So rule #1 is get the highest return on investment. Just think about this. There's 2 sides of your net worth. It's going to be simply your assets plus your liabilities makes your net worth. And as you increase your assets, aka your investments, or if you decrease your liabilities, which is going to be your debt, both dollar for dollar will increase your net worth. But there's a reason why we have this whole entire debate, because we need to know which investment will be the better return. So paying off your debt is a guaranteed return on your investment. If you have a 22% interest rate on your credit card, you know that the return on the money that you spend to pay off that debt is going to be 22%. That's the debt side, super simple. But now on the investment side, there's no guaranteed rate of return. The risk is not knowing the return on the investment because it's directly related to how good of an investor you are. This is where knowing your numbers is extremely important. First, you need to know what is the average rate of return on the stock market. The average return on investment in the stock market historically has been 10% per year since they've tracked this number. So now you want to compare the return on your investment when it comes to paying off your debt. In my example, it was a 22% interest rate on a credit card, and we're going to compare that with investing in the stock market with an average rate of 10% return on investment. The debt payoff would hands down increase my net worth much more than the investment would. Do me a favor and like this video if you've gotten value out of it thus far. And if you want to continue to learn more about managing your money, investing, and career growth, go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And to download the free debt payoff calculator, click the link in the description. So the second rule is going to be maximize your cash flow. And this is going to be when you ask yourself, how much is interest costing you per month? We recently paid a little over $20,000 in debt all at once, and we emptied out our savings account to do it because it was costing us like $900 a month just in interest to hold that balance. We had 2 credit cards that were super high interest rates. One of them was family expenses from when I didn't have a job, and the other was pretty high from furnishing and decorating an Airbnb last year. We made more than the minimum payments on both cards, but we were paying more in interest than we were paying onto the actual debt balance because the interest rates were so high. Our Amex card was charging us $500 a month alone in just interest, so the $800 payment we would make would barely decrease the balance. We used the Airbnb revenue to make the payments on the business card, but holding that balance was still costing us over $400 a month. Yes, it did hurt to see our account go from $20,000 down to zero in just one day, but it was part of the plan and you have to trust the process. Now we're not paying almost a stack every single month in interest, and we can use that money to run it back up way faster than we could have done when we were paying interest before. So the $900 in interest plus the $500 or $600 that we were putting towards the principal can all be saved or invested. So basically, the reason why paying off this debt was smart for our circumstance is because the interest was costing us so much money. And if you remember rule number 1, which is to get the highest return on investment, we compared our stupid high interest rate of 25% to what we could have got by investing in stocks, which right now is basically nothing, and we decided to stop the bleeding. No more paying interest. Another thing to consider when you're making the decision to either pay off your debt or invest is, where is the money going to come from that you're going to use? Are you going to be pulling from a savings account like the example that I used before, or are you going to be just using your paycheck that you get every 2 weeks? Or are you going to be doing one of the other 3 options, which is like grabbing equity from a home or moving it from one investment to another, or are you going to borrow it? Those 3 I don't really recommend, but if you're going to do one of the 2 things, make sure that you understand the top 2 rules. You should always first compare which one's going to give you a better return on your investment. But second, you should also be able to calculate exactly how much you're paying in interest per month. After those things are considered, now you need to decide, do you have a lump sum of cash that you want to use towards paying off a debt or an investment, or are you going to be paying for it monthly or bi-weekly? If you're going to be using a lump sum, then you don't generally want to throw it all into an investment at one time because it's usually a lot more risky. Instead of doing that, you should rather do dollar cost investing. If you're not familiar with dollar cost investing, leave it in the comments and I'll make a video about that in the future. But if you're going to be using your check to bi-weekly pay off your debt or to invest, then you might want to put a small amount towards investing, but prioritize paying off your debt first. The next thing to consider is, how much debt do you actually have? If you're like me and you have $100,000 plus in debt, you probably don't want to wait until you have all of that paid off before you start investing, because of the thing we talked about in the very beginning of the video, which is time in the market. All that time that you lose, you're losing a whole lot of money in interest that you're making over time, because investments are compound interest. If you got a few $1,000s or 1 or 2 small credit cards that you can knock out within a year or less, I would say go ahead and knock out your debt completely and then start investing. But if this is going to be a multi-year deal where you're paying off debt for long term, then you probably want to start investing now and just invest a smaller amount and prioritize the debt at the same time. The next thing to consider is, how much does having debt bother you? If you're like me and you can hold a debt balance and sleep like a baby, then perfectly fine. You might want to consider investing first. But if you're going to be super stressed out and you can't sleep, which is technically kind of like a baby as well, then you probably also want to consider paying off that debt just to ease your mind, because your mental health is going to be way more important than your financial health. So it all depends. What are your overall goals? Are you optimizing for cash flow, meaning you want to have control over as much of your cash right now, or are you optimizing to build wealth long term? If you are optimizing for cash flow, then you probably don't want to spend too much of your budget paying off debt. You want to be able to control your spending and use your money either for investing or whatever else you'd like to spend it on. But if you are optimizing for building wealth long term, then you probably want to pay off all of your high interest debt first and then start investing the difference. And then after you're investing and you've paid off all your high interest debt, then you can go back and pay off the lower interest debt as well. If this video is helpful for you to decide if you should invest first or pay off some debt first, go go ahead and smash that like button, and then in the comments let me know which one you decided to do first. Also, if you want the debt payoff calculator that I use to pay off over $100,000 in debt, go ahead and click the link in the description. And if you want to learn how to use that debt payoff calculator, watch this video here. That's going to be all for today, and don't forget, you are worthy of wealth.